highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues throughout our area. Now, today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue.
Welcome to another program of Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm your host, Carl Gronberg, pastor of Gethsemane Lutheran here in Austin. We're going to talk today to Judge Bill Aleshire. For those of you who watch local access cable television, he is seen as the presiding officer of the Travis County Commissioner's Court. However, as you probably already know, he does much more. The County Commissioner's Court manages an operation that has an annual budget in excess of $200 million. And Travis County employs 2,500 people. That makes Bill Aleshire a major CEO here in Central Texas. And like any major CEO, Judge Bill Aleshire has to tackle the problems Travis County faces to meet the demanding future that lies ahead. One of those questions that lies ahead is the future of Bergstrom Air Force Base and the potential role it'll play as a replacement for Robert Miller Airport. Judge Aleshire is a major player in this question as a member of the Austin Transportation Study. Also, another area of concern is the Balcones Canyon Lands. He is a member of the Canyonlands Conservation Plan Committee. In light of both plans, Aleshire may be a minority voice, but his voice is one of caution that will need to be reckoned with. But the biggest responsibility that county government serves is that of social services and criminal justice. This list is just an overview of the area served by Travis County government. We're now joined on Austin Faith Dialogue by Judge Bill Aleshire. And we hope in the next half hour to discover Judge Aleshire's view of the future of Travis County, the problems and potential solutions the county faces. Judge, thank you for joining us today on Austin Faith Dialogue.
Thank you, Carl. I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you here. A lot of things we want to talk about. Let's talk a little bit, though, about you, the person, so that people can know. Where were you raised? What's your background? Where do you come from?
Well, I was an Army brat most of my childhood. I was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My mother's family is from Northeast Texas, Paris and Cooper, in that area. My dad was stationed over in Germany for a couple of years, and so I actually started my first grade. Was in a school for military dependents in Germany. My younger brother was burnt severely over there, and they brought him to Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio,
sure.
which is how we got back to Texas. My dad was stationed at Camp Stanley there in between Bernie and San Antonio, and so I grew up in Bernie. It had about 3,000 people. Graduated from high school there. Then went to East Texas State University in Commerce, Texas, up in God's country, as folks in Northeast Texas will tell you it is. And after 3 years there, I transferred down to the University of Texas. I got my degree in government, began working while I was in school in my senior year at the state legislature, the state senate. Was married during that year. I then served 2.5 years as a conscientious objector, doing community service work here with the Human Opportunities Corporation. Went back to the House of Representatives, where I worked for some reform-minded legislators. Went from there to, for another 3.5 years, I worked for Bob Bullock in the state controller's office. I tease folks that having spent 3.5 years there with Mr. Bullock proves I have grit.
And true grit.
True grit. And it was a wonderful experience. It really invigorated my feeling about public service. And I then in 1980 ran for county tax collector. I spent 5 years in that job, and then was elected in 1986 as county judge. In 1976, I met Rayetta, my wife, and we put our families together with 3 children. Tammy, who's now 22, and Jared, who's 21, and Jonathan, who's 19. And we've lived in this community and worked in this community now for over 20 years.
And you love this community.
I love it, absolutely. It's
have a
special.
commitment to this community.
It's a special place.
One of the reasons we want to have you on Austin Faith Dialogue is your concern about social services and the human dimension of what makes Travis County and the Austin area important to all of us. But you told me before the program started that you grew up in a tradition. You sang in a church choir. You went to nursing homes. That value of human life. And I know some of the big things that are happening in our community that we mentioned at the top of the program has to do with Bergstrom Air Force Base and the Canyonlands. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is the concern that you have regarding the relocation of the airport to Bergstrom Air Force Base?
Well, I've found, I've learned a lot in the time that I've been county judge. I've had to face a lot of difficult issues, very complex issues. But I find that there's something in common that we need between a lot of these issues that we need to remind ourselves about. We need to work harder on a sense of community, a real feeling that we care about each other, that your concern is my concern. As people, would routinely ask me as I walk down the hall, how you doing? I say, I'm doing okay if you're doing okay. We need that spirit enhanced in this community. It's not as if Austin doesn't have it. But how does that relate to the Bergstrom issue? I think that the problem that one of the problems we've had is this east-west split, that I-35 constitutes more than just a highway, that it has been in a lot of ways a symbol for an area of town that doesn't do as well as other areas of town, and that there's a bigotry that still exists in this community that needs to be challenged. I'm asked often, what are the root causes or the root problems that we have in this community? And having school dropouts and teen pregnancy and those kinds of things are serious problems, but I say that bigotry is the most serious problem that we have. And I see the issue of moving the airport from Mueller, where it is now a real negative for people who try to live in that area, adversely impacts people in their homes, at their schools, at their churches. To move it from that location to Bergstrom is moving the problem, in my opinion. And I'm very concerned that we won't enhance the opportunity for economic development at Bergstrom, in part because we're going to bulldoze or move a lot of the facilities that are already there to make room for a second runway, which will be necessary wherever we place our airport. And yet it will still impact people on the east side, airplanes taking off right over Del Valley schools, impacting thousands of people's homes. Their plan is to operate it for 24 hours a day. So peace and quiet that we would all want in our homes is destroyed. And I guess the bottom line to that, Carl, is that I look forward to the day we can have the kind of spirit in this community where we believe as a community that there's as much value to a $25,000 home as there is to a $250,000 home, and that we express that in all the things we do as a community and that we do as governments.
I hear you calling for a sense of unity, and that some of these divisions, such as created by a major highway, wherever the major highway might be transcended by a sense of unity within the community. But honestly, how is that possible? How can we help? How can you, as a governmental official, how can we hold up that vision? That's part of our job in the religious community, but how about, is that part of your job as a government official to hold that same kind of vision up of the unity of the community, that if you're living in this part of town, you're as important citizen as the person in this part of town?
Sure. We share that between all the institutions in the community. Want the community to be better. Part of the way we do that is to encourage people to behave better toward each other. To not only have respect for themselves and what they want and what they need and be able to prosper for themselves as individuals, but to care about their other members of their family, to care about their neighborhood, to recognize that sense of community, to promote the attitudes to be expressed in all the things we do, in government as well as in private life, that really make this a strong and progressive place. We've made plenty of mistakes in that regard, and this is a very government-oriented town, and we expect a lot more as a community. We expect a lot more of our local governments than some other communities do. But the people issues that we face here in the criminal justice area, on the issues of east and west divisions, bigotry, of poverty, health problems, and those kind of things will not be solved, even as strong as the municipal or county government is. We will not solve these problems with government. They're so based in attitude and feelings. The kids that we see in our criminal justice system have attitudes that have been built through their lives. And those are things that the government's not the cause of that problem, and the government won't necessarily be the solution.
You have lived here for 22 years, is that correct? You love Austin, but you also have some concerns that you're raising about Austin. We want to be a people community, concerned about all the people. So the issue of Bergstrom and the relocation of the airport is really not a matter of where you put a runway, but it's a matter of how is it going to impact those people, and what are we going to do to make sure that people, wherever that airport is, and that isn't going to be solved easily. But there are other issues that you're concerned about regarding the attitudes of this community, the generosity of the community.
We have, for all the time that I've been here, thought of ourselves as a very progressive, very charitable community, a very caring community, and that's true in many respects. The facts don't make us compare very well, though, to other metropolitan communities. You look at the level of giving to United Way and see that the average contribution in Austin is about a third of what it is to cities of comparable size. We are making a mistake here, and this is a heck of a thing for a government official to say. We're making a mistake being so dependent on the social services of particularly the city and county governments. We do provide in services that are important, and we are sometimes the only funding source. It does take a certain amount of money, but I think this community needs to challenge itself to do more through its churches, through its civic organizations, with individuals just caring about each other, just neighbors behaving as real neighbors, not just people who own property next to each other, or who live next to each other, who use the same streets and so forth, but people who are neighborly. It would make, it's such a naive sounding thing, but it would make a world of difference in the cost of their taxes and in the quality of this community.
You sound like a prophet, and that's good. We like to have those kind, but be careful. Prophets don't have a real good track record on life expectancy, all right? Well, we're going to come back. We're going to stop for a few moments of this conversation, then we'll be back, and we want you to stay with us as we talk with Judge Aleshire here on Austin Faith Dialogue. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Serving Austin means serving you. That has always been the primary goal of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. We are religion in action through the work of these organizations. Each plays a key role in making the capital city a better place to live, but we can't do it alone. Do you have some spare time, talents, or any resources that you can share? If you do, please call AMM at 472-7627, because serving Austin means serving you.
We're back in Austin Faith Dialogue, and today we're talking with Travis County Commissioners Court Judge Bill Aleshire. That name, we want to have it right, Aleshire, on the issues and the problems facing Travis County in the future. We talked in the first part of the program, Bill, about Bergstrom and the attitude of unity and bringing people together, and how we can work at having a sense of neighborliness to one another, and working through the institutions we have, our churches and the different educational institutions we have. Let's talk about another big high visibility item in our community, the canyon lands. Can you talk with our Austin Faith Dialogue group a little bit about that?
Well, you know, there is a federal law, the Endangered Species Act, that prohibits people from doing things that will harm these endangered species. We have the distinction of having probably more endangered species in our area in Travis County listed than most any other, well, certainly any other community in Texas, maybe distinguished even nationwide. It would, if simply left as it is, there are landowners in western Travis County who would really never be able to do much development at all with their land. A significant amount of property in western Travis County would be restricted from the development for all practical purposes. We have tried to work bringing together the landowner interest and the community's environmental concerns and issues about public recreation together for a regional plan And instead of leaving individual landowners on their own to get permits from the federal government to be able to do their development projects and to set aside small pockets of preserve areas, that we would have, in essence, one large preserve that would be organized with through the city government and the county government and the Lower Colorado River Authority. But it's a very expensive proposition. The entire plan for 20 years is estimated to cost around $140 to $150 million. This community is strapped for resources for other important areas as well, and so it is one that we at the county have moved very cautiously. We understand the dreams and the hopes that people have for having a massive 30,000 acre preserve established here. I do understand the benefits environmentally to the endangered species, to water quality, recreationally, to having open space land for people who live in an increasingly tense and stressful city, to have a place to go and to relax and to feel that feeling of respect and communion with nature. But we also have to be very pragmatic about it. And the battles that we've been through, the arguments that we've been through, have been those things that we say, well, look, if this is a proper and good thing for us to do, again, for the government to become involved in, for the local government to become involved in, I want to know that what we support is practical, within our means, and will achieve the goals of economic development and environmental protection that we claim this plan is going to.
I think you're a hopeful person. I root that in my theology and listening to you. You seem very hopeful, but are you optimistic? These issues such as the Bergstrom issue, the relocation of the airport, the canyon lands, are you optimistic about a solution coming out that will benefit people, that will help people and make the community feel more of a solidarity with one another?
I have such pride in this community and its people, in spite of the criticism that I also have for us and for myself, that's what leads me to be an optimist. If there's a community anywhere that can work through these kinds of problems and come to the best solution within our means, it is here. We have such a high level of democratic debate and discussion. That's healthy. It gets overdone sometimes, I believe, but it's healthy that we have people who want to speak out, who have an opinion. There are people who are sophisticated in their technical abilities that combine with that, and there's an underlying spirit of caring. But we have to keep drawing that out of ourselves. I mean, it's not automatic. It's just as any individual would do. If we're asked suddenly to make a decision, we may not think about all of the ethical aspects of it if we don't challenge ourselves, or someone else doesn't challenge ourselves to do that. And I think that's where we are with these big issues on the Canyonlands Conservation Plan. Can we afford to spend money there compared to the other health needs and more directly human needs that we have in the community? What will we do with Bergstrom? Will we simply move what has been an aggravation and a problem from one location in the community to another? Or are we going to really try to solve these problems? What are we going to do about children in this community that just don't have family support, because families don't seem to have community support? What is it that we can do, not just with government, but how can employers in this community recognize the whole person of the people that they have working for them in their companies and help them through their personnel policies and their compensation programs to encourage unity and involvement of their workers in those families? Those are all things that if we'll keep asking those kinds of questions and keep challenging ourselves, this place can do it if any place can.
You said early on the program when you were telling us about your background that you worked with some reform legislators. I hear you calling for in 1990s, the late 92, 93 time, for reform of where we have been and where we're going. Before the program started, you and I talked about the 60s and the impact the 60s had. What do you think these days, when we are the leaders, when we are the ones involved in the Austin-Travis County community, what are they going to say about us? Are we going to be able to be people who will hold up those kind of values that you just enunciated? And what about the concerns for a couple of things you said, criminal justice and education and youth who don't have families? Where do you see the role of government playing a part in those types of sacred entities of our society, if you will, the family and the school?
First, there are some things that we do and we do well. We need to preserve those, but a lot of the techniques, a lot of the underlying attitudes of government will no longer work. The idea that when people commit a crime that you simply have a very narrow and specific reaction, that you investigate a crime, you find out who did it, you bring them to trial, you sentence them, and you hold them in jail, and then you let them back out, is a technique that is doomed to financial collapse and extremely wasteful, because that doesn't work. The complexity that we have in trying to do what used to be rather standard government services is just incredible. We've got, and I don't know. I'm traditionally trained government official here, and I'm having to struggle with how do I change my own attitude, my own approaches. How do I ask myself new questions and listen to the questions and demands of other people that no county judge has ever been asked before? I'm dealing with issues that none of my predecessors ever had before them. The health issues in the community, the environmental issues, and even things that the law enforcement issues that were there are now more complex, because we see there's such a massive number of people who are becoming involved as children and later as adults in the criminal justice system that we cannot handle it in the traditional way. We will not solve the criminal justice problem within the criminal justice system. We're going to have to go upstream, as I say. We have to go upstream to the education system, to the system in the community that produces families, that produces individuals. We've got to go upstream to the teen pregnancy issues and those kinds of things. And so I don't have the automatic answer, but I do believe that recognizing that we're being challenged to think differently and fresher, to give consideration to approaches and ideas that never been given before, is part of the key. It's the first step.
Bill, when you talk about going upstream, going to educational institutions, I want you to pursue that a little bit with me, what you think. And what about the role of the faith communities in Austin and Travis County? What is our accountability? What is your vision of the role and responsibility of the faith communities? Let me just tell you a little story. Many years ago, through the Austin Area Conference of Churches, which was one of the predecessor bodies for Austin Metropolitan Ministries, we had a ministry in the jail. And when Chaplain Anderson retired, they invited some of us clergy in the community to make calls. So I went down and made calls in the old county jail. What an eye-opening experience that was. And then we looked forward with anticipation to the new jail and it being constructed. And I go down there now, and it's still an eye-opening experience. Human beings incarcerated there, and what are we doing with those human beings, and what are they doing for us? How do they feel a part of this, or are they separated from us? How can we go upstream to all of these areas of the educational institutions, the faith communities, and the family?
The rehabilitation of people who have committed crimes, especially those who have committed multiple crimes for a number of years, does not occur just because they were locked up. Everyone that I've talked to in the criminal justice system says it is the spiritual recovery of the individual that becomes the solution for the society and for those individuals. A couple of years ago, there was a proposal during our budget process to cut out funding for the 2 chaplain positions that we have. We have over 2,000 inmates in our jail and only 2 chaplains. At first, that seemed like an okay idea. The more we understand what happens with the real recovery of people in the criminal justice system, the more we realized how important it was to keep those positions. Now we're moving in cooperation with a private funded group to put at private expense, not public expense, a chapel. It's a
in Del Valley.
In Del Valley. It's a non-denominational effort in all these things, but there is a role within the jail system itself, but in the broader community for churches. I think it's important, as it always has been, for members of all religions to be true to what we are taught, to remember that while we're interested in our own salvation and what's going on with us, that the reason that people join a church ostensibly is to not only to understand how to be better themselves, but how to apply that in the community. And I think we do pretty well with the first and not so good with the latter. We need more activism from the people in the religious community in the most helpful way. And I'm not a good strategist in that regard, but there is a role for all the other institutions, the educational, the business, the religious institutions in the community to come together with government and help us be a more complete community.
You know what we're going to do when we do that, when we come together? We're going to struggle together. And I think that's one of the exciting things, because I don't think anybody, be it the religious community, the educational, or the governmental, has all the answers.
Right.
But when we recognize the whole person, then we'll recognize that that person is spiritual, emotional, intellectual, physical, and all these dimensions are important for the role of the person. What about the future of Travis County?
Well, I believe that this is today still an environmentally beautiful place. If people would take just a moment to reflect on how lucky we are, just look around. There are blighted places in my community, but generally it is a gorgeous, special place in this state. We are blessed with institutions that have been here for a long time, that have helped shape the character. The universities, and not just one, but the universities that are here have left an indelible mark on this community, will always be a part of its character. The government, especially being the home of state government, but our governments of all levels have also helped shape the character and provide, all of these things provide a base for this community that many communities don't have. It is the struggle that we've been going through, I think, in particular for the last half-decade, and will intensify, in my opinion, in the next half-decade, that will make the differences whether Austin is just another big city, just $750,000 to $1 million people over the next 20 or 30 years, whether it is a leader and that special kind of place that it would be, where we have managed to be a city but also a community. And that's my hope, and that's my effort.
And you know, that's why we wanted you on Austin Faith Dialogue. Thank you, Judge Aleshire, for being with us, and we're out of time, but we thank you because you are the ones who are important. You make this program important, and you make the community important. Participate in making Austin a special place to live. Thank you for watching Austin Faith Dialogue, and watch us again next Sunday. Until then, peace be with you.